annoys you about your husband, but he keeps doing it anyway? It's funny you think that after a few years of marriage, after 3 kids, after building a home and a life together, you'd be on the same page about the simple things. About respect, about communication, about not throwing your partner under the bus. But apparently I was wrong. Because here I am, trying to hold everything together, while my husband seems to think it's perfectly normal to invite his entire family over to our house. Not just without asking me, but when he won't even be home himself. We both work full-time jobs. I'm a teacher, so my days start early and end when the last bell rings. Though anyone who's ever taught knows the work doesn't end when you walk out of the school doors. And then, as soon as I get home, I step straight into my second full-time job, taking care of the kids, managing the house, cooking, cleaning, laundry, the works. My husband works too, of course, but once his day is done, he's done. Mine never is. And despite all of that, he seems to think I'm just sitting around, waiting for extra guests to entertain. It started again this morning. I was already exhausted before the day had even really begun. I'd gone into work early, prepped my classroom, taught a few lessons, and was already mentally mapping out the list of things I needed to get done once I got home. Then, as he was dropping off our middle child at school, the same school where I teach, he casually mentioned that his sister and nieces were coming over later that day for a play date with his parents. He said it like he was telling me the weather forecast, like it was just some neutral, irrelevant fact that had nothing to do with me. After school? He said, like that explained everything. I just stared at him. What do you mean, after school? I get home at 3. You don't get home until 5:30, and then you go straight to coaching until 7:30. How is this your plan when you won't even be here? That's when he did what he always does. Turned it around on me. He rolled his eyes and sighed dramatically like I was being ridiculous for even questioning it. They don't have school in their town today, he said, and you never want to see my family. You always make this a big deal. And then, before I could respond, he stormed off, like I was the unreasonable one. Like I had just ruined his day by daring to ask why people were being invited into our home without anyone consulting me. The thing is, this isn't new. This is a pattern. He's done this so many times, I've lost count. One time, he invited his uncle over while he was at work. I was home alone with the kids, trying to get dinner ready and help with homework, when the doorbell rang, and there was his uncle expecting lunch and conversation. I had no idea he was coming. None. And when I told my husband afterward that I didn't appreciate being ambushed like that, he acted like I was attacking his family. So this time, I decided I was going to handle it differently. I texted his mother, politely. I told her I had no idea about any playdate plans and asked if we could reschedule for a time when it actually worked. Ideally when her son, the person who invited them, would actually be present. She was understanding, thankfully. But when my husband found out, he was furious. I veto your decision to cancel, he said. I swear, he actually used the word veto, as if this was some kind of democracy and not our home, as if I was a subordinate and he was the one making the rules. I laughed. I couldn't help it. You veto my decision? What are you, the president? This is my house, too. I'm not hosting anyone when you're not even here, especially when you didn't even bother to ask me. That, of course, led to another argument, the kind we've had so many times that I can now predict every sentence he's going to say before he says it. He accused me of being dramatic, of trying to keep his family away from the kids, of melting down over nothing. And I, once again, found myself trying to explain the concept of basic respect to a grown man I've been married to for years. What gets me the most is how obvious it all seems. It's not about his family. I like them well enough. It's not about the visits. I'm happy to host when I know they're coming and can plan for it. It's about the lack of communication, the total disregard for the fact that I, too, live in this house, that I, too, deserve to know what's going on, that my time and energy matter. But apparently, to him, they don't. Because as far as he's concerned, if it involves his family, I should just roll over and accept it. And that's the part that stings the most. Not the unexpected guests, not the extra work, but the fact that I don't feel like a partner. I feel like the household staff, like the unpaid event planner whose job it is to make sure everything runs smoothly while he gets to be the fun, spontaneous one. And I don't know how much longer I can keep pretending that's okay. It wasn't just about that one afternoon. That's what I kept telling myself over and over. This wasn't a one-time thing, some misunderstanding we could laugh about later. No, this had become a pattern, a deeply frustrating, exhausting cycle that chipped away at my patience a little more each time it happened. Every time I brought it up, it was the same story. I tried to talk calmly, rationally, explain that I wasn't trying to keep his family away, that I just needed to know what was going on in my own home. And every time he'd twist my words. He'd accuse me of making drama out of nothing, or say I was being too sensitive, or my personal favorite, having a meltdown. A meltdown. Because apparently wanting a heads up before guests arrive is the same thing as throwing a tantrum. I started noticing how it was changing me. The first few times, I brushed it off. Then I started getting anxious every time my phone buzzed, wondering if it was going to be someone from his family confirming plans I didn't know existed. I'd pull into the driveway after a long day at work, and instead of looking forward to being home, I'd feel a knot in my stomach wondering who might be waiting for me on the other side of the door. It got to the point where I stopped feeling comfortable in my own house. That's what really hit me, that sense of losing control over the one place that was supposed to feel like mine. I'd come home still carrying the weight of teaching and parenting and housework, and find myself thrust into host mode without warning. No time to prepare, no chance to catch my breath. Just me, smiling politely and trying not to look as exhausted as I felt, while his family made themselves comfortable. And they always did. They were nice enough people, but they'd come in like it was their second home. Shoes kicked off by the door, toys scattered across the living room, requests for coffee, snacks, meals. And every single time I'd glance at the clock and know he wouldn't be home for hours. It wasn't just inconvenient, it was disrespectful. And it wasn't just about me, it was about our kids too. He'd drop these visits on them without warning, and they'd have to rearrange their routines around whoever showed up that day. It turned our home into something unpredictable and chaotic, and I hated it. The worst part? When I tried to talk to him about it seriously, really talk, he'd shut down. He'd cross his arms, sigh, and act like I was attacking him personally. "They're my family," he'd say, as if that explained everything. I shouldn't have to ask permission for them to come over. Permission? I'd repeat, incredulous. "I'm not asking you to ask permission. I'm asking you to communicate." But he'd just shake his head, dismissive as always. "You're overreacting. It's not that big a deal. Not that big a deal." I could scream. What he didn't seem to understand, or maybe he just didn't care, was that it wasn't about the visitors. It was about the complete lack of consideration. It was about being treated like an afterthought in my own home. It was about having my boundaries crossed again and again until I started doubting if I even had a right to set them. One time, I came home after a 12-hour day, school, meetings, grocery shopping, dreaming of nothing but a shower and a quiet evening. Instead, I opened the door to find his parents sitting on my couch and his nieces running through the hallway. I stood there for a moment, groceries still in my hands, just staring. "Oh, hi," his mother said cheerfully. "He told us to stop by. Hope you don't mind." I did mind. I minded a lot. But what was I supposed to say in that moment? Tell them to leave? Make a scene in front of the kids? So I plastered on a smile, put away the groceries, and spent the next 3 hours entertaining guests I didn't even know were coming. When he finally got home, he acted like nothing was out of the ordinary. "They had a good time," he said with a shrug, as if that was supposed to make it all okay. I went to bed that night with tears of frustration burning behind my eyes, because it wasn't just about that night. It was about the 100 little nights just like it, about every unwashed dish, every unplanned visit, every time my needs were dismissed as unimportant. And the more I thought about it, the more I realized something painful. He didn't see me. Not really. He saw what I did. He saw the meals, the clean laundry, the kids being cared for. He saw the house being maintained, the schedules being kept. But he didn't see me, the woman doing all of it. The woman who was tired and stretched thin and just wanted a little respect. I started wondering if he even respected me at all. If he could so easily invite people into my space, into our space, without a second thought, then what did that say about how much he valued my presence in this home? It was a question I didn't want to answer, but it was a question that wouldn't stop echoing in my mind. The resentment built slowly, like water filling a glass drop by drop. I kept telling myself it wasn't worth a fight, that I should just let it go for the sake of peace. But each time he did it again, each time I came home to a living room full of people I hadn't prepared for, the glass filled a little more. And one night, it finally overflowed. It was a Wednesday, a day that already felt like a marathon by the time the sun went down. One of the kids had a meltdown at school, the youngest had a fever, and I had a stack of papers to grade waiting for me at home. All I wanted was to crawl into bed and breathe for a moment. Instead, when I opened the door, I walked into what looked like a full-blown family gathering. His parents, his sister, her 3 kids, they were all there. Toys were scattered across the floor. Something was boiling on the stove, and I could hear his father laughing loudly from the living room, like this was some casual Sunday barbecue. "Hey, come in, we started without you," his mother said brightly, waving from the couch. I didn't even have the energy to fake a smile this time. "Started what?" I asked flatly, kicking off my shoes. "Oh, just a little dinner. He said it would be fun to all get together midweek," she said, as if that explained everything. I stood there staring at her, and for a split second, I genuinely thought I might cry. Midweek, on a school night, without a word to me. And of course he wasn't there. I excused myself to the bathroom, closed the door, and just sat on the edge of the tub for a few minutes trying to breathe. My phone buzzed, a text from him. "They're over, hope that's okay. Be home in about 2 hours." That was the moment something inside me snapped. It wasn't anger, not exactly. It was something colder, a kind of clarity. Because in that moment, I realized that as long as I kept tolerating this, he was never going to stop. So when he finally walked through the door that night, laughing and cheerful, ready to eat dinner with a table he hadn't even helped set, I didn't smile. I didn't say hello. I simply stood in the doorway of the kitchen and said, "We need to talk." His face fell a little. "Now? Can it wait until after dinner?" "No," I said. "Now." The room went silent. His family shifted awkwardly, clearly sensing the tension, but I didn't care. I wasn't about to bottle this up for another night. "I am not your housekeeper," I began, my voice calm but shaking slightly. "I am not your hostess. I am not here to clean up after your decisions. I am your partner, and partners communicate. Partners plan things together. What you're doing, inviting people into our home without telling me, expecting me to host them while you're not even here, it's not just inconsiderate, it's disrespectful." He blinked at me, stunned. "It's my family," he said, as if that was a defense. "And this is our house," I shot back. "You don't get to make decisions that affect me without even asking. You don't get to turn my life upside down on a random Wednesday night because you feel like having a little dinner. That's not how this works." For the first time, he didn't have a comeback ready. His jaw tightened. His eyes darted toward his mother, then back to me. "I think you're overreacting," he muttered. I laughed, but there was no humor in it. No, overreacting would be me locking the door and refusing to let anyone in. Overreacting would be packing a bag and leaving for the night. I'm talking to you. I'm trying to make you understand how much this hurts. How small and disrespected it makes me feel. Silence. The kids were watching from the hallway. His mother was staring down at her plate, and for once, he didn't have the arrogance to shrug it off. I left the room then. I didn't want to stand there and argue in front of everyone. I went upstairs, shut the bedroom door, and sat on the edge of the bed, heart pounding. It wasn't about that night anymore. It was about years of being treated like my voice didn't matter. He didn't follow me. He stayed downstairs, awkwardly finishing dinner with his family. And I sat alone thinking about everything: the work, the exhaustion, the resentment I had buried over time. And I wondered if this was the kind of marriage I wanted to model for my children. Because if they grew up watching me accept this kind of treatment, what would that teach them about respect, about partnership, about love? It wasn't a question I could answer yet, but for the first time, I knew I had to. The silence between us after that night was different. Not the usual silence that follows a small argument, the kind you can patch over with a joke or a cup of coffee the next morning. This one was heavy, deliberate, a silence that meant something had shifted. He tiptoed around me for a few days, careful with his words, overly polite with small talk, but I could see it in his face. He still didn't understand why I was so upset, and honestly, that hurt more than the argument itself. I wasn't asking for anything extraordinary. I wasn't demanding grand gestures or dramatic apologies. I just wanted something so basic, it should have been automatic: consideration. A simple conversation before decisions were made that affected me. A warning before guests showed up at my door. A partner who saw me as an equal, not just the default caretaker who'd pick up the slack, but he didn't get it, or maybe he didn't want to. A week after that dinner disaster, it happened again. Not a full family visit this time, just his mother, but the principle was the same. I came home from work, juggling backpacks and grocery bags, and there she was, sitting on the couch, watching TV with our youngest. "Oh, hi," she said cheerfully. "He told me to come by and spend the afternoon here." My heart sank. It wasn't that I disliked her. She could be kind and helpful at times, but that wasn't the point. The point was that once again, I hadn't been asked. I hadn't even been told. I set the groceries down and took a deep breath. "Did he tell you I didn't know about this?" Her smile faltered slightly. "Well, no. I assumed you did." I wanted to be angry with her, but how could I? She was just doing what her son had told her to do. This was on him. Again, when he got home that night, I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I just asked one question. "Why do you keep doing this?" He sighed and dropped his keys on the counter. "Doing what?" "This," I said, gesturing toward the house. The kids, the dishes I hadn't had time to finish because I was entertaining an unexpected guest. Inviting people over without telling me. Acting like my time doesn't matter. Like I don't exist in this house. He looked genuinely confused, like I was speaking another language. "It's just my mom. What's the big deal?" And that was it. The sentence that summed up everything wrong with our dynamic. What's the big deal? The big deal was that I was tired. Bone deep, soul level tired. Tired of being treated like a background character in my own life. Tired of my boundaries being ignored. Tired of having to rearrange my day to accommodate plans I had no part in making. "Do you realize," I said quietly, "that you're putting me in a position where I'm the bad guy no matter what I do? If I go along with it, I'm resentful and exhausted. If I say no, I'm the mean wife who doesn't want your family around. I'm tired of being the villain in a story I didn't even write." He rubbed his face and muttered, "You're blowing this out of proportion." And that's when something inside me broke a little, because I realized he wasn't listening. He wasn't hearing a word I was saying. In his mind, this was still about his family. In my mind, this was about us, about respect, about partnership, about whether or not I could keep living like this. That night, after the kids went to bed, I pulled out a notebook and started writing. It wasn't a letter to him. Not yet. It was a list of all the times he had done this. All the times I'd come home to surprise guests. All the times I'd been blindsided by plans I didn't know existed. It was longer than I expected. Much longer. Seeing it all written down made something crystal clear. This wasn't a series of small misunderstandings. This was a pattern of disrespect that had been building for years. And if I didn't draw a line somewhere, it was going to keep happening for years more. The next morning, I left the notebook on the kitchen table. No accusations, no screaming. Just the list, with a note on top. "This is what it looks like from my side. If you still think I'm overreacting, read this again." I don't know if he read it. He didn't mention it. But for the next few days, there were no unexpected visits, no surprise plans. And for the first time in a long time, I walked through my own front door without bracing myself for what might be waiting inside. But deep down, I knew this wasn't over. It wasn't just about the visitors anymore. It was about something deeper. A fracture in our marriage that couldn't be fixed by a few quiet days. And if we didn't address it soon, I wasn't sure how much more I could take. Days turned into weeks, and on the surface, things looked calmer. No unexpected visitors. No last-minute playdates sprung on me minutes before they happened. Part of me wanted to believe he had finally understood, that the list I'd left on the kitchen table had done what words couldn't. But another part of me, the part that knew him too well after all these years, couldn't shake the feeling that this was only a pause, not a change. I was right. It was a Saturday morning, the kind of morning that should have felt peaceful. The kids were playing in the living room, I was catching up on grading papers, and the house was finally blessedly quiet. Then my phone buzzed. "Hey, just a heads up, my parents and my sister are coming by this afternoon. Should be there around 1 no question mark. No, is that okay?" Just a statement. I stared at the screen for a full minute, feeling my chest tighten. After everything, the list, the talk, the tears, we were right back where we started. When he walked through the door a few hours later, I was waiting. "Did you send me this text?" I asked, holding up my phone. "Yeah," he said casually, like it was no big deal. "I figured I'd let you know ahead of time this time." "Let me know." My voice was calm, too calm. "You told me they're coming. You didn't ask. You didn't check if it was a good day. You just decided." He frowned, clearly annoyed. "I'm trying, okay? I'm communicating no," I said firmly. "You're informing. there's a difference. We stared at each other for a long time. Then, like always, he sighed and turned it around. You're making this into such a big deal again. They're family, they want to see the kids. Why do you always make it so hard? It was almost laughable at that point, how predictable he was. But I didn't laugh. I didn't even argue. I just nodded and walked away. At 1 p.m. sharp, they arrived, and this time I didn't plaster on a fake smile. I didn't rush to make coffee or snacks. I greeted them politely, then excused myself to the bedroom and closed the door. I could hear them laughing in the living room. I could hear the kids playing. I could hear my husband trying to explain my absence, something about needing a break or grading papers. And for once I didn't feel guilty about it, because here's the truth. I did need a break, not just from the constant drop-ins, but from the feeling that I was invisible in my own home. He knocked on the door about an hour later. Are you gonna come out? No, I said without hesitation. I told you how I felt. You chose to ignore it. You don't get to make decisions that affect me and then expect me to smile through them. He didn't like that. I could hear the frustration in his voice. You're being childish. Maybe, I said, still calm, but at least I'm being honest. The rest of the afternoon passed without me. When they finally left, he came back into the bedroom, clearly ready for another argument, but I wasn't in the mood for one. I can't do this anymore, I said quietly, before he could even open his mouth. I can't keep having the same fight over and over again. It's not about your family, it's about respect, and if you can't give me that, I don't know how we move forward. For the first time, I saw something flicker in his eyes. Not annoyance, not dismissal, but something closer to fear. Are you saying you want to leave? He asked, his voice barely above a whisper. I don't know, I admitted, but I am saying that something has to change, because I'm drowning here, and I refuse to teach our kids that this is what a healthy marriage looks like. He didn't respond. He just stood there, silent and pale, like the ground had shifted beneath his feet. Maybe it had. That night, we barely spoke. He slept on one side of the bed, I on the other, the space between us wider than it had ever felt before. And for the first time in years, I started thinking seriously about what life might look like if this didn't change. It terrified me, but it also felt like the first honest thought I'd had in a long time. The days that followed felt like standing at the edge of a cliff. One wrong move, and everything we'd built together could crumble. For the first time, I stopped trying to smooth things over. I didn't rush to start conversations. I didn't fill the silence with small talk. I let it hang between us, heavy and unavoidable. And I think that unsettled him more than any argument ever could. He started to notice the little things. Or maybe he finally saw them. The way I stayed in my room when his family came by. The way I didn't jump up to tidy the house before they arrived. The way I stopped planning meals around visits I hadn't agreed to. It wasn't about being petty. It was about reclaiming the small pieces of control I'd lost. One evening, about a week after that Saturday, he came into the kitchen while I was folding laundry. For once, he didn't look defensive. He looked uncertain, vulnerable even. I've been thinking, he said quietly. I didn't look up. About what? About us. About what you said. He hesitated, running a hand through his hair like he was trying to find the right words. I didn't realize how much I was hurting you. Or maybe I didn't want to realize it. That made me stop. Slowly, I turned to face him. You keep saying it's not a big deal, I said softly. But it is a big deal. It's a big deal because it's about more than just visitors. It's about how much you respect me, how much you value me as your partner. If you can't even include me in something as simple as who's coming into our home, how can I trust you with the bigger things? He nodded, his eyes fixed on the floor. I think I was just so focused on what I wanted, on seeing my family, on making them happy, that I didn't think about how it affected you. And that's not fair. There it was, on the thing I had been desperate to hear for so long. Not excuses, not deflection, just acknowledgement. I don't want this to break us, he said, his voice cracking a little. I don't want you to feel invisible in your own home. I don't want our kids growing up thinking this is normal. A lump formed in my throat. I didn't say anything right away. I needed to know he wasn't just saying what I wanted to hear. So what are you gonna do about it? I asked finally. He looked me straight in the eye. From now on, no more surprises. If I want to invite anyone over, anyone, we talk about it first. And if you say no, then it's no. No guilt. No arguing. I wanted to believe him. God, I wanted to. But words were easy. Change was hard. Actions, I whispered. I need to see it. And slowly, I did. The next weekend, his mother texted him asking if she could stop by. He showed me the message before responding. Would you be okay with this? He asked. It was such a small thing, a simple question, but it felt monumental. A few days later, his sister suggested a family dinner. Instead of saying yes immediately, he asked if the date worked for me. And when I said it didn't, he told her we'd find another time. No argument. No passive-aggressive comments. Just respect. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't a magic fix. But it was a start. We had a long conversation one night after the kids went to bed. The kind of conversation that had been missing from our marriage for far too long. We talked about how we'd gotten here, how I'd felt dismissed and undervalued, how he'd felt like he was trying to balance family expectations with ours. And for the first time in years, we actually listened to each other. It's not like everything changed overnight. There were still moments when he slipped, when he'd almost say yes to someone before checking with me. But each time, he caught himself. And each time, he apologized. Not the empty, automatic kind of apology, but the kind that means something. I started to feel like a partner again, like my presence in this home mattered, like I wasn't just here to manage the chaos, but to share a life with someone who saw me. And one evening, as we sat on the couch after the kids were asleep, he reached for my hand. Thank you for not giving up on me, he he said. I squeezed his hand back. Thank you for finally seeing me. It wasn't the fairy tale ending, but it was real. It was messy and hard, and took far longer than it should have. But for the first time in a long time, I felt hope. Hope that maybe, just maybe, this marriage could become the partnership I always wanted it to be. Not because one of us won, but because both of us finally decided to fight for it. And if there's one thing I've learned through all of this, it's that love isn't just about the big gestures or the good days. It's about the moments when you choose to listen, to change, to grow, even when it's uncomfortable, especially then.